Hey guys, this is Captain Coldblood back for another day of the 30-day Star Wars Challenge. Today is the beginning of Week 2, November 8th, 2017, and today is the discussion of our favorite movie from the original trilogy. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, which I assume you have, you understand how much of a fan of the Empire I am. I've also explained how I'm also a fan of the Clone Wars. Really, it's a difficult decision, but I have not seen the prequels as much in recent times as I have the original trilogy. To explain my preference of them, first off, any new Star Wars thing that comes out takes precedence as my favorite thing, simply because it's Star Wars. For a time, Force Awakens was my favorite Star Wars film. I have kept count. I've literally watched that movie 29 times. And I've watched Rogue One 13 times, because I haven't had Rogue One as long, and I, haven't just watched it as much, because the hype wasn't quite as there for Rogue One, even though I loved it more than The Force Awakens. So, really, I'm going to rule The Force Awakens and Rogue One out, because Force Awakens is not even close to a contender for my favorite Star Wars film of all time, and Rogue One is really too modern, and I've not had it long enough to really think of it as my favorite Star Wars film. It was amazing, but it was inferior to my favorite Star Wars film of all time. Now, to go back to the prequels and original trilogy rhetoric I started with, I have watched the prequels a lot when I was a kid. It got me into Star Wars. Then the original trilogy was Star Wars to me. I have only seen Return of the Jedi twice, because that is the one film out of the Star Wars franchise that I do not own. I own an original 1977 VHS of A New Hope and an original 1980 VHS of The Empire Strikes Back. And that right there is my favorite film, The Empire Strikes Back, 1980, Star Wars Episode 5. So, I'm going to handle this one a little differently. I'm not just going to gush about it. I'm going to go through each segment of the film and really cover why I love each segment so much, because with other things, I could be nitpicky with other films, like especially A New Hope. I am nitpicky about how whiny Luke is at the beginning. I mean, this guy becomes a Jedi Master. Like, crying out loud, it's replaying Anakin kind of how, it's kind of replaying how Anakin was, because I know he gets a lot of flack. This guy becomes Darth Vader. Well, Luke Skywalker wanted to go to Tosche Station to pick up power converters, so I really don't like that part of the film. Also, with Return of the Jedi, there are too many edits to it to really enjoy. I enjoyed the original Ewok song, but we're focusing today on The Empire Strikes Back, and I'm going to go through segment by segment. So first, it opens up on the classic Star Wars opening. You see probe droids launched to explore various sectors of the system. Viper probe droids are one of the coolest looking robots I've ever seen in Star Wars. I did not consider them in my long list of favorite droids for that video, but if I had to pick a favorite, like, assault droid, that would probably be my favorite aside from the B-2. The Viper probe droid is just incredible, especially in Battlefront 2015. I really enjoyed getting a Viper Pro Droid. It was valuable, it was cool, and I loved the little little radio communication it gave. That was always awesome for me. Seeing black, shiny robots flying around with probe arms. It's just amazingly cool. Then we move on to Luke getting attacked by a Wampa. I thought the creature was interesting. It mainly just served its purpose and was gone. I didn't really care about it that much. I got more of an experience with Wampas out of the original Battlefront 2's hunt mode on Hoth, if you know what I'm talking about. Then we cut to Han Solo and Leia having a little back and forth. That's always cute. The rogue smuggler. Oh, don't get all mushy on me. So long, princess. I always love that line so much. And Leia's in denial. Solo is trying to be, kind of backhanded. I could arrange that. You could use a good kiss. All that dialogue from Han Solo is hilarious. So I like that little scene. Han goes out despite the cold. The absolute certainty of death, and goes out and finds Luke. Luke has a Force vision from Obi-Wan, who at this point we thought was dead. So that that is interesting as well. There's life beyond the void. There's actually, the Force can sustain you throughout the whole of your existence, not just your life and death. So then, I thought they smelled bad on the outside. They're found by Hobby, Rogue 2, I believe. at this time. They make it back to Echo Base. Leia and Han have another kerfuffle. And then the classic kiss your brother meme that has been made ever since Return of the Jedi came out. It's over 30 years old, and it never gets old. I always just burst out laughing when I see that, because ignorance is bliss. So then we move on to the actual Imperial assault, and this is where a lot of Star Wars fans have one of their favorite moments. 5 AT-ATs and a detachment of stormtroopers go down to Hoth's surface and begin the ground assault, while the rebels have to evacuate as quick as they can. So the rebels eventually take down 2 AT-ATs, and the battle ensues to where General Veers completely just destroys the rebel base. Now, I completely skipped over probably my favorite moment of the film in how excited I was to explain this. Since we've been focused mainly on what's been happening to the rebels right at the assault, let's pan back and go to the Empire. If you have watched Empire Strikes Back, you understand that it was the first introduction of the full Imperial March. It was played when the Executor, the Super Star Destroyer, which is, oh my goodness, incredible. The Executor Super Star Destroyer is shown, and the Imperial March begins to play. That is the Star Wars music that everybody recognizes. They don't always recognize the main theme or the Force theme, even though they may possibly be better. The Imperial March is always recognized as Star Wars. No one ever mistakes it. So, you see Admiral Ozzel, he follows his own tactics very well, but they're not what Vader approves of, and it ends up backfiring on him. You are in command now, Admiral Piet. Thank you, Lord Vader. That moment of just, like, oh my goodness. And also, Veer's quick speech right before he chokes Ozzel to death is really just, I've memorized the full thing, I'm not going to do it, but that full, like, speech is just awesome for some reason. So, then we cut back to the assault. Han Solo has to take Leia on the Millennium Falcon, and Luke escapes, barely, after losing Hobby, and Wedge having to lead the rest of the T-47s in the assault. So eventually they escape. Luke makes his way to Dagobah, while Han and Leia have to hide from the Empire. The Millennium Falcon hides in a large asteroid, which happens to be a space slug, for a short time. Luke goes to Dagobah and finds Yoda and learns more about the Force, begins training. This begins the several weeks of training that is shown in the film over several cutscenes. So, Han and Leia eventually escape. Lord Vader is contacted by the Emperor, saying the son of Skywalker must not become a Jedi. So, all of this to say, really, the story is progressing, time is passing. Han and Leia eventually fix their hyperdrive and get away and head for the Bespin system with Boba Fett, Han on their tail. Unfortunately, the Empire already had an establishment there, or at least arrived shortly before they did, Lord Vader assuming what they were doing. So they are betrayed by the rogue Lando Calrissian, who I personally love his character. I'm not in love with the character like I would be with Vader or Thrawn or Grievous, but I just love his character. He's smooth, he's amazing, he's got great energy. That actor really had great energy with him. So, Han, Leia, and Chewie are captured. C-3PO is blasted to pieces, and then Luke senses that they are in danger. Really, him giving up his training early was an interesting point. Against Yoda and Obi-Wan's better judgment, he goes and attempts to save them. And, of course, it's a trap. That should have been a meme before Akbar said it, but, it's a trap. Eventually, they escape with Han Solo. Boba Fett takes Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt. And Han is lost until Episode 6. Well, eventually, Leia and Lando make their escape, along with 3PO, Chewie, and R2. I love this little bit of play between Boba Fett and Luke. It shows kind of how awesome Boba Fett is. A lot of his reputation is gained from stuff he doesn't say. He looks incredible, but not much is known about him. So everything he does is pretty incredible. And then we have the iconic lightsaber fight between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And in this fight are several iconic lines, including "all too easy" from Vader, I'll never give in, you killed my father, those lines, along with impressive, most impressive, one of Vader's signature lines that even they have in Battlefront 2015, and another line, you don't know the power of the dark side. All of these iconic lines being thrown around, and then the big finale, you do not yet realize your importance. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father. And the slow Imperial March that plays after that. And Vader doesn't even bring up evidence. He looks at Luke and tells him, search your feelings. You know it to be true. And Luke is in denial. He is ripped apart at this point. Obi-Wan has lied to him. Vader is his father. And all he thinks about at this point is escaping. So he lets go, he falls. And I feel legitimately sad for Vader. It could have ended right there. There could have been peace, but Luke chose not to do it. So anyway, that iconic scene, the way it was executed, is perfect. And trivia for probably about half of you that don't know this, the original line in the film, I am your father, was not to be known to anyone except George Lucas, Luke Skywalker, who was played by Mark Hamill, and James Earl Jones, who voiced Darth Vader in the original films. The original guy in the suit was supposed to say the line, Obi-Wan killed your father. No one outside of 3 people were supposed to know who Darth Vader really was. That's how Lucas wanted it, and everybody was surprised at that point. Even James Earl Jones in an interview, when he read the script, said, no, Vader's lying. He's not really his father. He couldn't be. All this different stuff. So this reveal was beautifully executed. But moving on with the film, Leia begins to sense that Luke is behind. He uses the Force and reaches out to her, because she is a Skywalker as well. We don't know this at this point. But Skywalker communicates with Leia, and they eventually pick him up and escape Bespin with Lando Calrissian in tow. Then Lando and Chewie are on board the Nebulon B medical frigate Redemption, and Luke gets his brand new hand, the one that's become a big focus in the Force Awakens and Last Jedi trailers. You see a lot of Luke's metal hand. So he gets the actual synthetic hand, and Han is still trapped by Jabba the Hutt. Boba Fett brought him to Jabba. So Lando and Chewie go off and try to rescue him. And we gaze at the galaxy, and the credits roll. And everything about this movie, there's a focus on the Empire, yes. There's also a focus on the good guys. There's a focus on who you really are. Is Luke defined by his father, Darth Vader, or can he rise above that? See, Luke and Kylo Ren are complete opposites. They are still blood-related, although differently, to Darth Vader. Kylo Ren is seeking to finish what Vader started. Luke Skywalker is everything that Vader was not. He was everything Vader failed to be. So the real interesting conflict comes to a head in Episode 5 and continues on through The Force Awakens and hopefully The Last Jedi and maybe even the 9th film. Really, the yin and the yang, Luke and Kylo, all stem from this one character, Darth Vader, who is Luke's father and Kylo's grandfather. It's just beautifully executed, that moment. The whole film is dark, it's deep, that's how it was meant to be. It wasn't written by George Lucas. The original story for it was, but Lucas wanted to make it into kind of a slapstick, kind of a little bit funnier, a little lighthearted, whereas the actual director took it in a darker, more, story-based tone, and I'm really glad he did that. And honestly, I have watched Empire Strikes Back so many times. At one point during the summer, I watched it at least twice a week. That is how much I love the film. It is just wonderful, and almost every single one of those scenes that I talked about is my favorite part. There's no part that I particularly dislike. So, I mean, yeah, that's my favorite Star Wars film from the original trilogy. That would have to be Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. So, I thank you guys for listening this long. I'll be back tomorrow with my favorite film of the prequel trilogy. Until then, guys, have a good night.